Believe it or not, we're actually coming down to the end of the list of videos that I'd like to talk about when it comes to Scribble. Hello all you crazy people out there, my name is Michael, I like wizards and dragons and making games. Let's talk about fonts, configuration, and Markdown. So, this is going to be a video about Scribble, the wonderful, fantastic text rendering system for GameMaker, written by Juju Adams. If you're not familiar with how this works, I made a whole list of videos on how Scribble works. You might want to go and check it out. I am, in this example, going to be using Scribble 9, which is one of the newer versions, but I think everything I'm going to talk about here should be applicable to at least Scribble 8 as well. So let's get into some of the fun things you can do with fonts in this system. So, I am going to go and create myself a just an empty script 100 apparently. Let's call this Scribble config stuff. We can get rid of that function definition. Generally, when you initialize fonts and other related properties in Scribble, you're going to want to do it on game start, and that can be either like in the game start event of your, I don't know, game manager object or whatever, or it can be in a global script like I'm going to do here. So right now, I'm not really doing a lot of font management in this project other than to use the basically this as a default font. And when I actually draw the Scribble text, we're going to be setting font_game as the starting format. Right off the bat, and I'm a little surprised, I don't think I've actually talked about this so far. If you would like to take a font and make it the default font for all Scribbles, you can, for example, get rid of that line of text, and in your Scribble configuration, you can say Scribble font set default, and this will actually take the name of the font, which will be fnt_game. This will not take the font asset itself, which I believe is similar to the starting format method on Scribble objects. So now if we run the game, we have ourselves the default font, which is just, you know, a console font, Courier New, whatever. This did not set the starting color. If you would like to set the starting color, there is a Scribble default color macro, and this defaults to C_white. So, I don't think I really talked about the Scribble config defaults code file either. There is a whole list of default parameters that you can set with regards to things like font color, default font alignment, default animation properties. If you'd like, for whatever reason, any control over things like the wave or the shake or the rainbow effect, you can set the default properties for those here. I believe there are also a collection of functions which allow you to override these properties at runtime, which you can call. I've never felt the need to use these, but should you ever want to edit, for example, the properties of the rainbow text effect at runtime, you can use the Scribble animation functions to control that. If you change any defaults, I would like to add, I usually like to mark the change with a comment line just with an exclamation mark. And that is so that if I ever update Scribble or Input or another third-party extension for GameMaker, in the event that the defaults are reset when you re-import the YYMPS, which they most likely will be, I can easily find and replace the changes to defaults that I've made. You might have your own preferred way of keeping track of changes to defaults that that you use. That's just the one that I do. If I run the game now, editing the Scribble default color macro will set the default color of drawn text to black, or red or green or any other color that you'd like. So that's setting the default font. There's a couple of other font-related configuration functions that you might want to use in Scribble. We have Scribble... what's the first one that I like to talk about? How about Scribble font bake outline? If you would like to bake an outline onto a non-SDF font, there's a couple of options to do this. This is something that you will have to do at basically when the font is initialized, at the beginning of your game most likely, and not at runtime, because the Scribble font bake outline 4 direction, Scribble font bake outline 8 direction, and the Scribble font bake outline 8 direction 2 pixels functions will basically pre-render an outline into a font, and that can take some tens to some hundreds of milliseconds, and if you do that at runtime, the player will most likely notice a hitch. Anyway, the way that this works is that this will take a source font, so that in our case that can be fnt_game. We can create a new font from this. I'm going to call this fnt_game_outlined. We can specify the color of an outline, which in most cases is probably going to be C_black. We can specify true or false whether or not we would like our outline to be smoothed in any way, and probably for most people that should be true. And there's an optional argument for texture size, which I'm going to leave alone right now, because Scribble seems to do a pretty good job of taking care of that for you. Now, should you ever want to draw outlined text, you know what, let's set this to the default. So should you ever want to draw outlined text, you can run the game. And now, okay, you know what? This would look better if the default color was actually white instead of black. So let's... GameMaker? Oh. Oops. This would actually look better if the default color was white instead of black. So now we can see that we have our text, which is still being drawn with Scribble, still being drawn with formatting. We can color it red and everything. But it does have a 2-pixel black outline around each of the characters. And this is causing the characters to be a little bit wider and also a little bit taller, which means that the text is actually running out of this text box here. Let's how am I drawing that? All right, that's outlines. So the difference between the different outline functions, 4-direction. So this goes back to like the oldest trick in the book when it comes to drawing outline text in GameMaker, which is that you just basically draw each character offset a certain amount from the center. So if you have a 4-direction outline, that's going to render each character, and I'll show it on screen with like a big pixel font to make it easier to see. This will bake an outline into the font basically by rendering the each character offset 1 pixel to the up, down, left, and right directions. Scribble fonts bake outline 8 direction will do the same thing, but instead of up, down, left, right, it will also render the font offset 1 pixel in each of the corner directions. And the 2-pixel font outline will render the font with an outline 2 pixels in up, down, left, right, and the 4 corner directions. This is the one that I like because it makes the outline a little bit thicker and more emphatic. But if you want a thinner outline, you can do this. This will create a thinner outline. And if you would like a really simple 4-directional outline, you can use the 4-direction outline option. Honestly, this looks pretty similar to 8-direction, and it's marginally faster to pre-compute. So if you want a thin outline, this is probably the way to go. But as I said, I do like the thicker outlines of the 2-pixel. I do like the thicker 2-pixel outlines. Next, very similar, we can Scribble font bake shadow. And this is going to have a very similar behavior. So we can take a source font name, fnt_game. We can produce a new name for the shadow font, fnt game shadow. The parameters are a little different, so we can have a dy and a dx. This is going to be the offset of the shadow. So let's try outlining this, or shadowing this rather, 2 pixels in the x and the y direction. The shadow color can be C. I feel like when I tried this before with C black, it didn't come out looking like much, so I might want to change it to like C blue or something like that to make it easier to see. I'll mess around with that later. Shadow alpha, let's set that to 1 for now. Separation, I'm just gonna go with 0. And smoothing, let's have a bit of a smoothing effect to the shadows. So now this will bake a shadow into the font, and if I set that to the default font, we should be able to render a bit of a drop shadow behind each of these letters. Apparently, and I didn't know this until recently, but apparently there is a bit of a debate on whether shadows like this or whether outlines are better for readability. I personally think outline text is better for readability. There are some people who hold the opinion that shadow text like this is better for readability. And it might depend on the font. It might depend on the style of what else is in your game, like the text box behind all the text. That's up to you. I'm not going to tell you to use shadows or outlines one over the other when it comes to readability. Do what you think looks better. But anyway, that is baking shadows. There is a one more Scribble font bake related function, and this will allow you to bake your own effects into a font using your own shader. I am not going to do this right now. So if you want to create your own custom effects on a font, you might want to use this function. If you're heavily into graph design and typography, you might have some ideas as to what you can do with this, but I don't have anything that I'd really like to do in a game by baking an effect into the font, into the bitmap sprites of each of the characters, so I'm going to leave that here for now. So Scribble also gives you the ability to do things like, let's maybe do some bold and italic shenanigans in this font. So by default, if you would like to use formatting tags like bold or italic in a Scribble font, by default this won't do anything. Let me go back to the regular font. By default, formatting tags like bold or italic won't do anything. You can use bold and italic text formatting tags in Scribble, but you do have to do a little bit of setup to accomplish that first. For example, if you want to define a copy of your font which uses the bold, oh, apparently this already is bold, so let me go back to the original and unbold that, set that to regular. So we have our regular font with no special font weight or anything like that. We have one with the bold font weight. We can create another one for italics, and if you'd like, you can also do bold italic at the same time, and you could use that in Scribble with the BI tag, I guess. I guess I'll show that off as well. I wasn't going to initially, but you know what? It's it should be quick, and we can do that. So in our Scribble font config code, we can say Scribble font, what is it, set family, set style family. And this is going to take a collection of up to 4 fonts. One is going to be the default, so FNT game. One is going to be the font which has the bold attribute, so that's going to be FNT game bold. One is going to be the font with the italics attribute, FNT game italic, and one is going to be FNT game bold italic. If you do not want to include any or multiple of these attributes in a font family, you can just set the argument to undefined and it will be skipped. There are some fonts which don't include bold or italic versions of themselves. Anyway, so once we run the game like this, we will be able to see that we have, did I mess that up? Game bold, that should be bold, that should, did I set that to italic? Hang on. I messed this up, didn't I? Alright, I switched bold and italic. Yeah. Do I have, let's bold italic row instead, so BI. Like that. Alright. So, once you configure the Scribble font family, we can make use of bold, italic, and both bold, italic font. And if we wanted to, we can, of course, we can also blend that with other effects such as rainbow or shaking text or anything else that you'd like. Alright, so bold, italic, and rainbow text. So before we move on to the fun subject of Markdown, there's a couple other functions I'd like to mention by name, but that I'm not going to really do anything with because I don't know enough about fonts and typography to have a lot to say about them. If you would like to, for whatever reason, retrieve information about any given character in a font, we have Scribble glyph font get, and this will allow you to return information about the width, height, or X or Y offset, or separation value of a particular character in a font. You can also do the reverse, and you can use Scribble glyph set, and this will allow you to set the width, height, X, Y offset, or separation value of a character in a font. I can't say I know why you'd want to do that at runtime. It's allowed. Maybe if you wanted some really weird text effects, you could play into it with that. Scribble kerning pair get and set. So if you ever want to annoy a fontographer or a graphic designer, ask them what kemming is. That's a bit of a graphic design joke because kerning refers to the spacing in between characters in text. And if you do it wrong, you can end up with situations where, for example, the word kerning looks like kemming because the R and the N are squished together. And once again, I can't think of any situations where you'd really want to do this off the top of my head, but if you ever want to change the spacing between particular pairs of letters, you could use Scribble kerning pairs for that. And lastly, there is the subject of superfonts, which is a completely wild sounding concept if you don't know what it is. So English and a lot of Western European languages, this isn't something you really have to worry about, but there are some languages, such as Chinese, most famously, which can contain many thousands of characters, or tens of thousands of characters even, which you will need to include in your game if you want to be able to display text in that language. And that can be a bit much to contain in a single GameMaker texture page, especially if you're using a very large font size. And in some cases, it might help performance-wise, or depending on what the GameMaker texture packer spits out for your font. It might just look better if you were to break a single font up into multiple fonts with different character ranges, and you can then combine them into a single font using the Scribble superfont functions, which will allow you to there we go, which will allow you to treat multiple fonts as a single font. If/when I learn more about writing code to localize games into Chinese language versions, and I have to learn a little bit more about how that works, I might make a video on Scribble superfonts, but for now I'm just going to leave it. And I think that's it. So Markdown. A lot of you probably know it. Got popularized, as far as I know, on Reddit, and then basically spread to the rest of the internet as a convenient way of doing text formatting on things like forum posts and the like. Discord supports it for text formatting. And this isn't something that you actually want to do in games very often. Like, this sounds like something that you're going to use more often than you actually will. But if you want to display Markdown formatted text in a game, Scribble does have a set of functions, well, really one function, which will convert a string into Markdown. So let's take this, and instead of using like BB code formatting tags, we can use Markdown-like formatting tags to do this bold and italic stuff. Asterisks or underscores work for italics in Markdown. So if we wanted to let's say format Ragnar the Red bold and italic using Markdown, we can say var text Markdown is going to be the result of passing this text string into this function over here, and this function will parse the string and turn it into basically the original version that Scribble can actually parse on its own. Actually, you know what? Let me do this the other way around. So I'm gonna say var text Markdown equals this Markdown formatted string. I'm gonna say var text equals Scribble and Markdown format the Markdown version. If you were to just draw or print to the console the Markdown string itself, Scribble won't have anything to do with this. Scribble won't automatically parse the formatting tags. You'll just see asterisks and triple asterisks and underscores and whatnot. But if you were to take the formatted version, the return value of Scribble Markdown format, and pass that into the Scribble function, Scribble will be able to do something with this. So basically, we're going to be removing all the asterisks, removing all the underscores, removing all the other Markdown formatting tags, and we'll be turning it into characters that Scribble can understand. If I run the game now, congratulations, you have bold, italic, and over here with row extend bold, italic. And you can make use of a couple of other Scribble Markdown formatting attributes. If you wanted like a header, you could use a pound symbol, and that will format text as a header. It won't do it in a particularly, say, elegant way. It will, by default, just scale up the text by, I think that's 2x. and it will make it look like a title text. You can use the Scribble Markdown format set styles function if you would like to set the Markdown styles for this. And I'm actually going to have to look at the documentation for this function if I want to be able to get this, because this function is going to take a basically a struct with a bunch of style information, and it will allow you to define what things like header styles or bold italic styles or quotes or other things. And this is I think I'm just going to leave a comment there about this function when I push it to GitHub instead of messing around with it, because this video is getting a little bit long and I don't want to bore people by messing around with Markdown styles or anything like that. Let's see. This might be a case where a GameMaker string literal might come in handy. So I want to let's play around with quotes a bit. And I think I'll leave it off there. Let me set the style of quoted text.
Hey.
And I'm going to set the color to like gray or something, just so that it's easier to read. All right. All right. This might be a little bit complicated. I want quotes to contain a struct, which is going to we'll make that C_gray for quoted text. And let's see how that looks. Alright, that's better. Dark gray might have been a better choice, but let's see. If I make it bold italic, it might be easier to read. Alright, yeah, that's quoted text. I noticed that quoted text in Scribble Markdown does not have the vertical indentation marker that you see in a lot of places where Markdown is used. But anyway, don't want to spend too much time messing around with that. Let's move on. If you do want to use Markdown and Scribble, definitely read through the Scribble Markdown set styles documentation so that you can configure exactly how it looks. Like I said, it's not that often that you really want to use Markdown in a game anyway. This is something that probably sounds more useful than it really ends up being most of the time. It's not often that you want to take an entire wall of text formatted with Markdown in games. Maybe if you had, like, I don't know, game update notes that you wanted to post in game, or if you wanted to have like an encyclopedia entry for something in game, you might want to format it using Markdown rather than just the normal formatting attributes. But
hey,
yeah, for most everyday use, for displaying like, you know, brief bits of NPC text or like inventory information or that kind of thing, this isn't something that you're probably going to need to use. And also, this function can be a little bit on the slow side for long strings because it does have to parse the string and extract the formatting information and turn it into a new string. So maybe don't do this in the draw event. Maybe do this once when the game starts and save the result for later or something like that. Anyway, I'm going to end this off here. This is all of the fun things that you can do with fonts and configuration in Scribble, or at least most of the fun things that you can do with fonts and font configuration in Scribble. As always, if you want the sample project here, look for the GitHub repository down in the description of the video. I like to post videos on the weird stuff you can do in GameMaker, so if you're interested in any weird shader stuff or 3D stuff, feel free to subscribe. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute to the channel, links to that can be found in all the usual places. You should all go check out the Steam page for Wizarducks, which is the game that I like to work on when I'm not doing YouTube stuff. Links to that can be found down below as well. I hope you all enjoyed that, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Zenjamin, VitroV, Squarecrow, Manta Ray, GameMaker, Edward Holt, and DJ Gibbles for supporting these videos. If you want to help out, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.